Hey everyone, Matt Thomas here. Thanks for watching. I wanted to record this quick video about effective ways to begin your class. I don't like calling these bell ringers or bell work or anything like that. I just don't believe in that, in the sense that students, when they hear bell work, oftentimes students think busy work. And they feel like, okay, as soon as I get in, I got to do my bell work and then my class will begin. Like after we're done with bell work, then we get in with instruction. And I'm a big believer in, so when you start class, however you start class, that sets the tone for the entire period. And we start instruction as soon as the bell rings, right? So whatever we do at the beginning of this class completely ties into the entire lesson, right? It sets up the entire lesson. So I won't refer to these as bell ringers because I don't see them as that. I see them as just another piece to your instruction, right? So these are fun and effective ways to begin your class. And if I wanted to link the previous video when I talk about lesson pacing, effective lesson pacing in the classroom. If you want to see that again, feel free to click the link and it'll talk about where to implement these in your lesson planning. So the first thing, using a Star Wars crawl to intro your lesson, realistically an agenda. But I have the link here. I think these are great. So if you're the Star Wars guy and you love Star Wars at home, be the Star Wars guy in class. I've talked about that in other videos. And what this link does, it takes you to something that's editable. You can edit you can put your agenda here. You can start class with that and talk about developing dopamine in your students. Right? They come to class looking forward to your the way you start class, your Star Wars crawl. So if you're watching the screen, you see that I'm demonstrating it right now. I'm just typing random stuff in, and then all of a sudden, there it is. And so you can use this, and you can use it to tell your agenda, to intro a certain lesson plan, whatever. Students love this, and I had a teacher who started using this, and I got feedback from their students, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so cool, he does this every day, for the agenda or to intro the class. And students love it. They come into class looking forward to it. The next thing, this is something I do frequently. I don't know, maybe once or twice a month or so, I'll start the class with a game show. And the game show sets up what we are doing for that unit. Or it might tie into it somehow. And it's only 3 minutes. It doesn't take that long at all. And when the students come in, I say, okay, can someone drop the lights? And then I will say, let's play the newest game that's sweeping the nation. And then what they do is, as soon as I show the game, if you're watching the screen, you can see that I'm demonstrating it right now. Then the students in unison will yell out the name of the game show, like they do, like Price is Right, Wheel of Fortune. They'll be like, guess what type of music, blah, 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 whatever my intros are. And they tend to be really long. And I tie it in. I try to make them fun, funny, things like that. So this was one we did with poetry. And we were tying in poetry and music. And they were in the middle of writing, I think it was their poetry analysis essay. And so I wanted to break it up. Or they might have been actually writing a song at the time. But anyway, I wanted to break it up a little bit. So I said, okay, let me show you this visual. These are stupid things that go along in my head, right? Let me show you this visual. Tell me what kind of music it applies to. And so obviously, if you're looking at the screen here, you'll see there's a rock, and people will be like, it's rock music. And I'm like, yay. I'm like, well, if you didn't like that rock, what about this rock? And they're like, alternative rock. I'm like, yay. And I do that with probably 12 or 15 different types of music. If you look at the screen, the slides, you can see there's a package being wrapped, and they're like rap music. So little things like that. It creates dopamine, excitement in the class. And you can see on my list, I have links to all of my game shows. Guess the figurative language while I rap. We were doing figurative language that day, and yes, I did rap in class. And so we did this game show, and I rapped the lyric, and they had to tell me what the figurative language was that I was using. So anyway, it does take a little while to make these slideshows, but you'll have it forever, right? And so I linked to all of them. You can look at them there. I think beginning with a game show is a great, fun way to start your lesson. Okay, so next one, solve an IQ problem. So this is something, again, 5 minutes, if the students come into class, you get them in groups of 4 or whatever, or if they're at tables already, and you put an IQ problem at the top of the screen, and they have 5 minutes to solve it. Now, I would not suggest doing first one that solves it gets extra credit, because if we talked about in my math video previously, one of the things that mathematicians specifically agree we should get away from is putting a timer on things. because it's not the end result, it's the journey, right? The journey of learning. So, hey guys, you have 5 minutes. Every group that solves this on their own gets extra credit. That way, some groups won't tune out right away and go, I'm not going to be the first to solve it. They always are the first, so they don't even try. They could, each person has an equal opportunity to earn extra credit. And so if it were a math class, I would put a bunch of Legos on a desk. And in groups of 4, be like, okay, you guys have 5 minutes to build a truck. Or you have 5 minutes to build a bridge or whatever, right? Or 10 minutes or whatever. Do something fun, solve some type of problem, give everyone 5 minutes and an opportunity for extra credit, or 10 minutes or something. Great way to start class. The next one, this is great for English class, EL class, or any class that you're doing vocab a lot in. It's a crossword puzzle or a word search. I have linked on the screen a free puzzle maker. So if you click that, it's the Discovery Channel puzzle maker. Great puzzle maker. I also have the full version of this. I think it's like $10 or so. And it gets rid of all the ads. You can do a bunch more things with it. It's great if you're doing vocab tests or whatnot. It gets their eyes on the vocab, seeing it from a different perspective. Crossword puzzles, word searches are a great way to begin class. So next one, time to vent. Venting time. So I would only do this if you have a good relationship with your class and you know that you can just sit and be like, guys, we've been working so hard and it's been such a struggle lately. You guys have been doing so great with it. Let's take 5 minutes and just vent. What are you feeling? Let's just tell me. Just vent. And no writing. Don't put a grade to it. Just say, hey, what are you guys feeling right now? Let's just talk. And let them just talk. And if you want to tie it to a lesson, it's great if you want to introduce a dystopian unit or like a novel or something like that. If you're just letting people vent about negativity that's going on in the world or whatever, maybe staying political free or something. You set up, this is why I say you have to have a good relationship with your class. But just let them vent. Going along with that, journaling. So if you don't want to do like a vent where they just are sitting venting out themselves verbally to you, ask them to write, to journal. Give them 5 minutes to vent in advance just by writing, right? But I would tell them in advance whether you're going to read it or not. So you could say, guys, I am not going to read this, so therefore freely share whatever you'd like, knowing that I will not put my eyes on it because I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. Or you could tell them, guys, I just want to let you know I will be reading this. So if there's something that you may not feel comfortable sharing with me, just know I'm going to be reading it. So, or if you really want to say something, but you don't want to do it publicly, feel free to write anything down, journal it, whatever you'd like. So there's good ways to set that up as well. Pictionary. Pictionary is great for ELD students or any vocab. I mean, gosh, imagine Pictionary in science. And it's one of those things, I always use mitosis as the example when I talk about science, because quite honestly, I don't know what it means. And so if you can imagine you're teaching about mitosis and then you do Pictionary the next day with all these science terms, and your students have to run up and try to describe mitosis in a picture. Now, I'm sure the science teachers and the science students can do it. I don't even know what it means, so I can't do it right now. But I think that would be really cool. Pictionary is great, like I said, for EL classes, but honestly for science classes as well. Have fun starting off class with 10 minutes of Pictionary or something. The next one, dress up as a Viking. Now, it doesn't specifically have to be a Viking, but can you imagine, so let's say you're starting mythology, and you're dressing up as your favorite mythological hero, or you're doing Einstein, and you dress up as Einstein. Your students will never forget that. They're going to tell that story, like they're going to tell the story years from now. Oh my gosh, my teacher would show up as insert whatever character here. And yes, your students will be taking pictures of you. And yes, they're going to be sharing it to social media. And yes, they're going to be tagging best teacher ever on there. Because the students love that stuff. Anything that just makes instruction better. It doesn't take that much to make instruction that much better, right? So dress up as your favorite character every time you're introducing a new unit. Students love that stuff. Last couple here. This is one that is used in English a lot, but I oftentimes feel that it's not used as efficiently or effectively as it could be. Beginning with a relevant and interesting story, and then asking for a quick write. So quick writes are used a lot in English, and they're very good for developing prior knowledge. However, I feel like if So if you add on just a little bit to the quick write, it makes it a little more effective. So when you're asking students personal information or any information that you want them to reply back to, I feel like teachers need to also share information about themselves first, right? And make it relevant. So I've told this story before. I was at a workshop once where the gentleman was talking about quick writes. And he was demonstrating how he would do it in class. And he did this story really long, by the way, like way too long. Your quick write story should be like a minute and a half. It was like 7 minutes about how he was playing hide and seek with his daughter and he couldn't find his daughter and blah, blah, blah. Long story. Doesn't necessarily tie into a 9th grade English class, right? To teenagers, like it doesn't necessarily have that connection. And so try to find relevant stories to set up what you're going to be asking. So for example, in Romeo and Juliet, I asked them a question. And so I set up this story before we do Romeo and Juliet. I tell the story of my friend Tim, who broke into a house and hid in a closet for 3 days to be with a girl. There was a girl that he liked, and the girl liked him. And his parents said, I don't want you seeing that girl. She's a bad influence. And so he broke into her house and hid in her closet for 3 days. Now, the story that I tell is very interesting, and it ties into Romeo and Juliet, Forbidden Love, because then I connect with that. I talk about how when I was competing, when I was competing in Las Vegas, and I tell this story about the whole tie-in was I asked the students to write a story where they learned a lesson, where a lesson was learned. And I tell this story when I was in Vegas about how I learned a lesson. I won't tell you the story, it's just because I don't want to spend forever on this, but it's a really unique story. And then I talk about, the next day I tell the same story from a perspective of another character, because the students have to write their story from the perspective of another character, talking about first person and third person, etc. And then a final example is when we get into Scarlet Letter in my classes, and I talk about the time I was arrested for shoplifting when I was 14. Now, there's nothing too exciting about that story. I think I took a video game and it was in my Target bag. My friend was taking a bunch of things and somehow a video game got in my bag at Target somehow. And so I was the one that got arrested. And yeah, not too exciting, but I mean, the way I tell it is a lot better than that. But yeah, so, and then I talk about like what would happen if we were judged based on what we do when we're 14, and I had a big T on my chest, right, to represent Scarlet Letter. So interesting stories, setting up your quick write that tie into what you're doing. Okay, this next one, students love, and it's great for argumentative writing. So asking students to debate random topics that they know nothing about ahead of time. And I set this up, I asked for volunteers only. And I say, guys, who here would love to volunteer? You get up in front of the class, volunteer debating a topic that you know nothing about. You don't know the topic in advance. You don't know whether you're arguing for or against yet. So, who would love to volunteer for that? And I set it up that way to where I like an icebreaker to where they know what they're getting into. So there's always students that want to come up. So they come up. And then I'll be like, this person you're arguing for and that person you're arguing against. And they don't even know the topic yet. And then I'll pull topics out of a hat, something that's interesting and relevant, nothing controversial at all. More things, because again, the purpose is to practicing debating, arguing, creating arguments. I'll talk about who is more difficulty growing up, male or female, who has more responsibility, parents or teens. And I'll usually end with I'll say it's the most difficult question, like the random one, hot Cheetos or Takis or chips, or is a hot dog a sandwich or something like that, like ones that are like, oh my gosh, root beer or Dr. Pepper. And some people will be like, I've never had Dr. Pepper. I'm like, too bad, you got to argue that it's better. And so they're creating these argumentative skills, and it's a blast. 5 minutes to begin class, 10 minutes maybe at the most, and it just sets the tone for just such a fun class. Okay, so just a real quick review. Great ways to begin class. Use the Star Wars crawl for the agenda. Begin with a game show. Solve a group IQ problem. Or use Legos to build something. Do a crossword puzzle or word search. Vent or journaling. Pictionary. Begin with a relevant and interesting story and then do a quick write. Or have random debate topics in class. Students love that stuff. That's all I have. Thanks, guys.